Right, the Family Research Council, as you know, is a public policy organization that works daily with government officials here in our nation's capital and across the country to influence and shape policy from a biblical perspective. I want that to sink in. We're unapologetically biblical. Right here in our nation's capital, just a stone's throw from the Capitol. We advocate for this. We go on Capitol Hill. We pray with members of Congress. They pray with us. We give them biblical foundations for legislation. Now, I know there might be someone from the left whose head's about to explode hearing all of this, but that's what we do. If the Bible were good enough to build a nation upon, the Word of God, it's good enough to guide a nation by today. And that's what we're doing, unapologetically, right here in our nation's capital. But FRC is also on the front lines in communities across the country, providing direction and structure to help churches and other organizations to have lasting and impactful leadership at the local level. And we do this through our community impact teams. And this is an effort that's bearing tremendous fruit in communities all across the nation. Joining me now to discuss this is Tim Throckmorton, National Director for Community Impact here at the Family Research Council. Tim, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be with you.
All right. Before we get into what we've seen as the fruit of community impact teams, let's define what a community impact team is. Describe that for our viewers and listeners.
Within a church or sometimes in a community, there are a group of people, 5, 6 people who are committed to standing for those biblical values you mentioned. They're there to inform, bring information, to equip the church and the community, to alert through the alerts we give and others give, and then to mobilize, and that's putting the boots on the ground. And through with those 4 pillars building this great group, they have great influence and lasting influence.
So they're kind of the community conscience of a church, of an organization where they're tracking what's going on. They're sharing that information with the church. I know they do voter registration efforts, voter guides, things of that nature.
A lot of folks ask the question, what can I do? This is the answer to that question. Through the resources of FRC and the direction of a community impact team, they can learn how they can practically get involved in their community through those aforementioned voter registration drives or even running for school boards.
Right. But you also, some of them, now there's basically a turnkey kit that's available that is A to Z, shows you how to set up a community impact team. So it's not like you just throw a concept out there.
Exactly. And folks can go to tonyperkins.org and they can find that link there to go to our site. And when they say they want to start a team, they'll hear from me. And I'll give them the direction. I do Zoom meetings to help them get set up. Sometimes I go and do trainings on site. But absolutely, there's a great structure. And to put meat on the bones, there are all these resources from FRC to help them provide those 4 areas.
Now, part of the community impact team, it is education, information, but it's engagement, and sometimes that engagement is service related. So there's different projects that these community impact teams can take on to serve their community, which builds credibility with the community.
And often they marry themselves to something the church is already doing and bring a enhanced perspective to it, often from a cultural understanding of what that ministry does, or even broadening the scope of that ministry within the church.
We've had some that are involved in disaster relief. We've had some that adopt a local school and go and paint it, clean it up, clean up neighborhoods. So there are ministry type projects that are incorporated in serving first responders to build those relationships of trust so that influence can be there to shape the policies that govern a community. So let's talk, Tim, a little bit about some of the fruit, some of the successes that we've seen through these community impact teams.
From coast to coast, Tony, out in Idaho, Elsa and her husband, they're realtors, but they have a community impact team within their church, and they have brought a number of folks from other churches that are participating. They reach out to the legislature, they reach out to the community, bringing information on key issues in the legislature, and they provide voter guides. In fact, their voter guide mechanism has increased 5 times in the last 3 years. They're reaching more people than they ever have, and they're really making a difference there. Over in Minnesota, in fact, right next to Ilhan Omar's district is a community impact team that has had great success.
Boy, that's a community that needs impact.
Has had great success with Andrew Brunson's video series. And they're using that, a resource of FRC, to train leaders. And Patriot Academy is used throughout our community impact teams to train their folks on how to understand how our godly heritage plays into our role.
That's working with wall builders and other resources that are out there. So it's a compilation to help churches to have greater influence. And it doesn't have to be a church. Primarily, it's based in churches, but if you can't find a church that's engaged, citizens can come together, and we'll work with them too.
That's a great point. At Liberty University, when we had a Stand Courageous event there a few years ago, there was a gentleman named Joe who lives in Culpeper, Virginia, who after the CIT breakout, he came. He said, "I think I need to get involved." And he worked a secular job, a layman in a church. He said, "I think I need to run for office." He ran, and he won. He's a town councilman now in Culpeper. He, along with the mayor, invited me recently to come and share the community impact team model with pastors in their community, realizing that if the church is strong, the community will be blessed.
So again, you can find out more about these community impact team toolkits that are available. Simply go to tonyperkins.com. You can follow the links over there, contact us, and Tim Throckmorton will be in touch with you to help you get those up and running. Now, I should know the answer to this, but I'm certain I do. If not, I'm going to make it be the case. Pray Vote Stand Summit, September the 15th through the 17th, great opportunity to do a workshop on CITs.
I'm all in, and that's where a lot of the grassroots folks in America come to hear about the great tools that FRC provides. One quick thing, and you've got to, Ken was on with you a moment ago. In Ohio, Issue 1 is on the ballot. I was talking to CIT leaders in Michigan just in the last week, and they volunteered. In fact, it's going to happen next week. They're coming down to Ohio to knock doors in Toledo. Michigan is coming to Ohio.
Well, but they know because what happened in Michigan this last midterm election in November, where there was outside money came in fact, more money spent to promote abortion in their state than the actual gubernatorial race.
Yes.
And so they understand what's at stake here with this outside influence and money. So they're coming to stand with churches and communities to educate them on Issue 1.
Michigan and Ohio coming together. It's quite a thing.
They don't do it in football, but they'll do it. They'll do it in defense of life, which is a good thing.
Yes.
So. A little bit more, some more success stories that we've seen from these community impact teams. I mean, people are always asking, we hear this, I know you hear it, I hear it, what can I do?
Yeah.
What can I do? I'll write a check, and that's good. You can make a donation to the Family Research Council. We need the funds to continue to have the presence that we have. But here's a real way to make an influence in your community. And we've seen this, you were in Kansas. I guess that's been a year and a half ago, standing with a police chief who simply had "In God We Trust" on the police vehicles.
I handed the town council a stack of 19,618 signatures, asking them to put it back on. It was interesting. I had a few remarks I could make to the town council, and I happened to mention that I had landed at Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport, who in, I think, 1956, help facilitate "In God We Trust" being our motto. They went into executive session and immediately began to reverse their decision. And I thought of Ben Franklin's words when I went to that meeting, because the whole town turned out, a lot of red, white, and blue. I thought of his question, if we can keep it.
Right.
I thought, they're keeping it.
Yeah.
They are keeping it.
Oftentimes, it simply takes individuals who know what's going on and then feel confident to stand. I mean, you don't have to be an orator. You don't have to be, the wealthiest person in town. You just have to be willing to take a stand. And what we do is we try to take the unknowns out of that by informing on the issues, equipping with the mechanics of how to do this so you're not standing alone. Small group. And we've seen this on school boards. We've done through FRC Action, we've done school board training, which is very similar.
Very popular.
And that has resulted in school boards being flipped and coming into the hands of now being controlled by parents.
You mentioned that the school board boot camp, probably the number one thing that I hear CITs use. Also, the Center for Biblical Worldview.
Right.
Those resources, even David's latest book, the churches that are using that, the CIT teams that are using that to train and to teach, it's meeting a very urgent need in communicating. And when folks don't know what to say or how to say it, they're often silent.
So this is a very practical way for churches to be salt and to be light. Yeah. We make it very, very easy. Again, it comes with a toolkit, basically a binder that shows you from A to Z how to set up a community impact team. So folks, if your church does not have some form of community engagement, salt and light, they've called different things, but if you don't have one, we've got one for you. Community Impact Team. Simply go to tonyperkins.com, follow links over here in the episode resources, click on it, and Tim will be in touch with you and help you if you have the basics, the foundation to be able to set this up and begin to influence your church and your community with the resources of FRC. So very quickly, Tim, we just got a couple minutes left. Kind of walk through the process. Somebody calls you. What would be the normal process of setting up a community impact team? How hard is it to do?
Very simple. My first response to them is think about who your team would be. I run through what it looks like on the ground, what they do. Then pick a team. Find your team. Pray and look for those people with these certain qualities. Then we do a Zoom gathering. Just sit down and talk, usually an hour or so, and that sets us in the right stage for a training event that will take place either via Zoom or me in person. And then they get started. It doesn't take long. That's the really neat thing. It doesn't take long, Tony, for them to see something in their community. Once they get together, once they begin to look at it this way, they see something that they think they should probably get involved in, and then they're off to the races.
And oftentimes, once one church starts, other churches show an interest in it as well. And so that's where the community training will often come in, where you'll go in and do training for multiple churches.
There are community impact teams that aren't a part of one church. They are multiple churches that have come together, and sometimes they meet at a church, but it's various churches in the community. You mentioned the stories quickly in Florida, in Port St. Lucie. They got together and they're starting a school co-op in their church.
Yeah.
These are retired teachers, and they're making a difference, meeting that need wherever they are.
Well, folks, don't wait until it's a crisis. If you, the best way for peace is strength. So if you're geared up now and prepared, there's a good chance the devil won't pick on your community. Tim Throckmorton, great to see you.
Good to see you, Tony. Thank you.
Keep up the good work, brother.
Thank you, sir.